You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoy the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech and Future Tech Health podcast. I have Leah Segedie. She's the author of Green Enough, Eat Better, Live Cleaner, Be Happier, all without driving your family crazy. She's the founder of the Momavation community, founder of ShiftCon social media conference, food activist, and social media consultant. So glad to meet you, Leah. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be on the show today.
Yeah, I know you probably didn't just wake up as a food activist, so you must have gone through some travails and trials. So what's your background? How did you get to this point?
You know, you're wrong. I actually did wake up as an activist. According to my mother, I had lots of opinions starting when I was just 1 year old.
Well, that's cool. Okay. You still had a journey, though.
I have red hair, so I am a outgoing, loudmouth redhead. With freckles and blue eyes, quite amusing, I would say. No, but really, when it comes to working in, safe food, wellness, consumer watchdog type of work that I do all the time, it's based on my family. And about 13, 14 years ago, my father died of cancer. It was a rare form of lung cancer, and it was called mesothelioma. A lot of people have heard of mesothelioma if they've ever been exposed to asbestos. And my father was exposed to asbestos at work. And, it's like you live your life one day, and then the next day you find out that the person who you love the most in the world is dying. And, that's where my story started, as like a bittersweet type of thing, where my father was dying, and at the same time I was pregnant with my first child, and I'd just gotten married. So, I just got married and boom, I got pregnant. And then I found out that my father was dying, and I quit my job and I helped my mother care for my father up until the very end. And it really rocked me to the core. And after my father died, my aunt died of cancer, my uncle died of cancer, and then my other favorite uncle died of, well, he was a vet, a VA vet, and he had post-traumatic shock disorder coming back from Vietnam. And they just didn't watch his medication very well. And, his kidneys and his liver just died, and he couldn't get a transplant. So over the period of 5 years, I lost so many people that I loved and were so important in my life. And then my family was just completely decimated. We had this humongous family with like Christmas and Easter, it was like 40, 50 people in a room. And it went from that to a little small handful of people. So that really impacted my life. And I think most of what happened is when I do my work, I can feel women that are similar to me, where they're just kind of overwhelmed and they don't know what to do when it comes to health and wellness, and what do I buy and where do I go and what do I do? And, you walk up and down the aisles and you see all of this marketing come at you, but what does it mean? And women in this world, I feel, are just really struggling to make sense of it. It's not that we don't have information. It's that we have too much, and we're struggling to figure out what is it that is relevant to us and what of it is not. And, as a woman, when when you're raising a family, that's the most important job that you will ever do in your life, is your legacy, and, to bring up your children. And, my job that I work with activism is also very important, but my children and my family is the most important thing to me. And I want to make sure that in the future they have better choices, that women that are bringing up children are not really sacked with the amount of stress that they should have trying to figure out, what is the best thing to buy. So what I really, really like to do is make their life simple, very, very simple. And, in Momavation, I have momavation.com, which is my website, which is where we do that. We simplify things based on science, and we look at a lot of different product categories, like different types of food and different types of products, like, pans and, like, say, probiotics, or, we just did hand sanitizers. We do all these, like, category investigations, and we look at all of the brands that are possible to acquire and purchase in the United States. And so based on that category, we could have anywhere from like 30 to 150. And then we kind of make it easy for women: bad, better, best, based on ingredients. And that's what I really like to do, is make women feel calmer, make them feel more secure, and just like, less stressed out, because, life is already stressful and we have a lot of toxic things around us. And so, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, it makes sense. My wife's been on, a similar journey for a long time. I remember years ago, she would, go to the store and look at all the products, and she didn't know what was what, and she's reading and watching and learning and asking questions, and she's always worried about me and herself and the kids, and
Yeah. Well, I mean, it started with me doing that, and I have a master's in communication management from USC. So I have a master's degree in public health communication campaigns and persuasion, and how to get people to understand what is better for them through communication. I have that exact degree. So if you're asking me, like, how are you qualified to do, what it is I'm doing, I'm doing exactly what I'm qualified to do. And, I do a lot of large scale, public health type of communication campaigns online. And we do it, and we organize women. But the reason I'm really able to do this is not just because, of me, but it's because of who I have behind me. So over the 13, 14 years that I've been in social media, in that time, I lost over 100 pounds, and that was how I started. And it was started by changing the health of my life after my father died. And at first, what I thought was health was all about weight. And I didn't really understand anything else but that. So I lost a ton of weight and then started up a community online. And based on that community that I first started grew and grew and grew, and it was really, really big. And so I had a lot of different type of professionals, that would advise me, from pediatricians and different scientists and, business owners and all kinds of stuff. And over the 13 years, we have organized influencers working in eco-wellness, talking about wellness issues. We've been, organizing nutritionists, we organize dietitians, we help organize different things online. So with momavation.com, that is my website where I put out content. And so that's all the content that I'm talking about: bad, better, best, consumer watchdog information, what's going on, with my life and the products in my life and what I'm buying, and what are they telling them and what are they not telling me, and what do I really need to know about, and what do I can just forget about. So I do that on Momavation. Okay. And then I have the ShiftCon social media conference, and that's where I gather all of the green wellness bloggers together in one weekend. And we're having in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's going to be October 3rd to the 5th. So anybody who wants to stop by that's really, really interested in eco-wellness and has a website and is considered an influencer, please stop by. We'd love to have you. So that community, I'm the founder of that community. And then I also have a blogger network where I have just over 10,000 influencers in my network, and we pair them with organic and natural brands. And they're, of course, the brands that passed my spec. So they're only brands that are in my best categories, which is really awesome. So no network does that but mine. But I'm really, really busy. But at the end of the day, what I said before is, I was born an activist. I was born, telling people what was the right thing to do. And, when it comes to public health and it comes to ingredients, that's pretty black and white. You can figure that out. But what I like to do is I like to help empower women and show them that they're more powerful than they think they are. And using and wielding that dollar that they have is one of the greatest powers that we have together collectively. And in very, really, really short years that I've been working in food activism, my gosh, I used to walk up and down the aisles and not see a single organic product. And now you see organic products, just lining the shelves. There's so much more choice out there for people like me. And it's really exciting to see so much change and so much good things happening, just really good things that are happening.
So what are some of the top issues or misconceptions that are out there in terms of good or bad foods or good or bad products that you've uncovered that really, really struck you?
The most interesting thing that I have run across is that idea of indirect additives. And that is where the next level of consumer, I would say, shock is going to come from. And I don't know if you have seen a lot of this, but indirect additives are the packaging that happens. It's the processing contaminants. It's all the things that happen to the food that are not an ingredient. So it's like, for instance, an indirect additive would be maybe bisphenol A, which is, you've heard of BPA, say lining a can, right, or BPS lining a can. Now that chemical was not added as an ingredient in your food. It found its way in there through leaching. And our government has about 4,000 of these quote unquote indirect additives approved for commercialization. So that means that the government knows they're there. They don't know how much is in there, but they understand that leaching is going to happen there and they're going to be in there. And those chemicals are the ones that scare me the most. So those are things like phthalates, which is a plasticizer. Those are things like perfluorinated chemicals that can get in your food through packaging. Things like bisphenols, like we talked before, that would line a can. And then even pesticide contaminants. Those types of things are not in the ingredient label. And those are the things that I'm really, really, really concerned with. So, when we do investigations, some of those investigations are very easy for us to do because they're based on what's in the food. And there's the ingredient, and then they have it on the ingredient label. But I care about what's beyond that. And that's where I believe that this world is going, because some of the nastiest chemicals that we're finding right now are those indirect additives. And they're coming from, packaging, contamination, all that.
Yeah, I guess that's sad. You could spend a lot of time and effort getting an organic, really seemingly healthy food product or drink, but depending on what it's packaged in, that could totally kill it, I guess.
Yeah, and
cause problems.
You're exactly right. People's eyes right now are on the food, and they're on organic food and not eating pesticides and those types of things, which are really, really, that's a really good move. That's a great move to avoid pesticides and to avoid all of the additives and preservatives and all those things that your body does not need and doesn't like to process. Great. But the next level is these indirect additives. And this is where I work with a lot of my partners. So on my scientific partners and my NGO partners or nonprofit partners that do a lot of testing. And so then behind the scenes, I will see some of this testing and I'll be like, we got to do something about it, So we get together behind the scenes and put on campaigns and things like that to pressure these companies to look into these issues, because they're just as important as the actual food, because they become part of your food. You eat them, and it's like in my book, Green Enough is a book that came out last year that talks a lot about this stuff. I refer to indirect additives kind of like toddler snot. So let me paint a picture for you real quick, just so you get an idea. So like if you have kids, so if you have a 2-year-old,
yep.
You know how their noses are always they're always snot everywhere. Like children have snot that's coming out of, you wonder what orifice that piece of snot is coming out of. And there's always snot as a mother. So you're just used to that. That's not a big deal. But let's say you're eating a hamburger, right? And you and your 2-year-old are eating a hamburger, and let's say he's eating chicken or whatever, and he wants a bite of your burger, and he's got snot all over his face. So you know what's going to happen. He's going to take a bite of that burger, and his snot's going to get all over your burger because, of course, of the way he bites it, and he's got a little face. And so now you have snot on your burger, and you bite and eat that burger. Is that snot an ingredient in your food?
Right, it's not. Yeah.
So
It's not.
so indirect additives are kind of like chemical snot, and they're an ingredient in your food, and I believe that they should be counted and we should know that they're there, but we're not there yet. So that's kind of like where I would like to see this go, is where food companies start testing for things. And so we get an idea what we're walking into when we consume a product. Now, the easiest way to get rid of all of these indirect additive chemicals, or the vast majority of them, is to just process and cook your food yourself. Honestly, that's the trick. You buy the pizza yourself, you go home, not buy the pizza, you buy the flour, you buy the this, you buy the that, you cook the pizza in your house with your ingredients. And when you do something like that, instead of buying it from a fast food place, it's not just, say, the preservatives that you're avoiding, but you're also avoiding the perfluorinated chemicals that are coated on the pizza box and those types of things, which are linked to damaging your immune system. Those are the kind of things that you avoid when you decide to cook and process your food on your own.
Well, the problem is, I know from my own food journeys, you could have like 2 pieces of chicken sitting there. One could have been, raised, grass-fed and fed well, et cetera. One could have been, chemicaled to death, but they look identical to the eye. And then now when you add in the packaging and all that, I mean, how would you ever know as a consumer what your stuff was packaged in or not? It's really tough.
Yeah, so the meats are difficult to get completely away from the plasticizers, which is why I kind of say most things, not all things. So if you think of indirect additives, it's kind of ubiquitous, kind of like nanoplastics are ubiquitous. They just did a study the other day and they found that pretty much anyone who's eating and drinking anything on the United States is pretty much has nanoparticles of plastic, nanoplastics inside their body. Nobody knows what that does. And there's no real way to get rid of all of it because plastics are in everything. But I think the point here is to lessen as much as you possibly can. So it's like that idea to be aware of it. And instead of having, grams of it in your body, let's do milligrams, or something like that. So it's just not as much, and your body doesn't have to try quite as hard. Now, it's interesting. Some chemicals are worse for men than women. So if you have that understanding, that's great. We talk a lot about that in Momivation. So like, for instance, the chemical bisphenol A, bisphenols are really, really, really bad for girls. They're bad for boys too, but they're really bad for girls. And then, there's another chemical called phthalates, which is a plasticizer. You'll find phthalates in a lot of things, but you'll find it in a lot of, like, say for instance, Kraft and mac cheese. That mac and cheese from Box and stuff, and they have that powdered cheese. Even if that powdered cheese is organic or not, it still contains phthalates because phthalates are an indirect additive. They get in through plastic things that are used on the dairy farm, basically, or they get in through that way, and they get in through the processing at the plant. So those types of things you can't get rid of completely, but you can definitely lessen their impact, and you definitely can lessen your impact in things that are primarily bad for your sex, if you're a male or a female. And that's what I would recommend doing.
Well, how much of an effect have you seen various levels of improvement in someone's food intake? If they
you mean in like their health,
just regular stuff to organic stuff, and then organic stuff to, non-packaged things, and then non-packaged things they add in yet another layer of improvement. Like what, how many levels have you seen there are, and how much improvement have you seen at various levels? Are you able to even get a feel for that?
That's an interesting question. So I have seen this. I mean, I've been working on helping people detox their homes for about 6 years now. And I have seen a really relevant type of thing. So what I'm noticing is, people who have autoimmune disorder, or they have a lot of IBS type of issues, when those types of people avoid the really harmful indirect additives, those types of people will see results right away, or they should start to see something happening. People that are normal every day, I don't necessarily think they're even going to know. You know what I'm saying? They may or may not know, because what this is about is, what it's been explained to me before by Pete Myers, which is, one of my favorite scientists that I work with. and several other people, they explained to it like you have a bucket. Every bucket, is a different bucket. It's a different size. I don't know how big your bucket is. My bucket could be tiny and yours could be big, but that bucket represents how much of these hormone disrupting chemicals we can afford to have in our body before it starts to disrupt our entire system. And so the point is, nobody knows. So when you get to the point that these things actually start harming you, getting rid of them and getting less of them in your life will help with something. I don't know what, but it could help with something. What we've seen a lot is people get significantly more energy. They're not as tired, I would say. A lot of the autoimmune type of stuff lessens a little bit. We've seen people have lower inflammation, those types of things, less problems with their stomach, and less of like that fog, that brain fog that you get. And I think it's a lot of this stuff is we could kind of like get it confused with just being a mom. Moms are tired because they've got kids, and moms are this because they've got that and all the stresses of the world. But there are a lot of these things are chemically induced as well as it just being, something that we're having to deal with from having a difficult life. But if you have autoimmune disorder, which I have and a lot of other people have, these types of things can make a difference in your life. But here's the other thing. I don't know what's going to make a difference with your life versus somebody else. And so I'd have to preface it with that. But we have seen a lot of reactions in a positive way. But we've also seen some interesting things happen, in the opposite way too. So I had a girlfriend who started, I'm trying to remember what the situation was, where she started eating organic food, but she was eating a lot of processed stuff. She wasn't cooking her food. So she wasn't quite getting the results that she was looking for because it was a lot of processed organic. So I would say if people really want to get the benefit of the energy and all of those other things that I'm talking about, try to go with the less processed organic food. But the other thing that I wanted to say is, and I probably should have stated this in the beginning because it's really important, is, when you're changing and detoxing your home, there's a lot going on here. There's food, there's, packaging chemicals, there's your personal care, there's cleaning, there's your indoor air quality. There's all kinds of things to think of. And you literally cannot do it quickly. You can't do it quickly. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. So, what we recommend that people do it slow and steady. And the older your children are, the slower I would do it. And the reason for that is, and it's a really good reason. There's your physical body, and then there's your mental body, right? And your mentality. And you have to kind of balance the two together to get to the finish line. So if you pissed off everyone in your family, right, by literally taking away all their bread that they like and all the things that they like and not putting it back in the refrigerator, you get a mutiny, right? And that mutiny is going to go on for a while because you decided to change their life. They didn't sign up for this. And so the mutiny is what we want to lessen. And so what we actually do in Momavation is we do we're kind of sneaky. We do a couple of things here and there so that they don't notice the changes. And then, they can't really complain so much if you make a small little change because people know it's good for them. So small little changes work. And then you get them gradually used to whatever those changes are. Then you make a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And that idea is to not make it painful on them. Now, women are very pained by this because we want to go 1,000 miles an hour and change everything. But when you understand that it's the finish line you need to get to, and you can't get there if you just remove everything right away, then it makes more sense. And so over the years, we've had a lot of community members doing it the slow way. It works fantastic. Takes years, like I'm talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but they definitely maintain a lifestyle that they can, again, maintain. And then people that go at it really quick, they get overwhelmed and they give up, and then they get mutiny at home. So that's one of the things that we recommend. And it's, if people are listening in the audience, there's so much to do. It's easy to join our community. If you just go find us on Facebook, it's Momavation, Mamavation. Just find us and we'll let you in. Unfortunately, sorry, Richard, it's ladies only, but there's thousands of mentors in there, thousands of other women to mentor and help. And so that's kind of all together. We do this together. It's not like I'm not the star here at all. What I really try to do is facilitate other women supporting other women because we all have different experiences. But it's really awesome to see this happen because, once you walk into a positive community that everybody kind of wants to support you and help you win and has been there and done that, it's different. Once you feel that support, you feel like things are possible.
No, it's just funny. As you talk, I can hear things my wife says. I imagine you speaking to her, and she would be like, "Yep, yep, yep, yep." It's just, like my mind as a man doesn't work like a woman's mind, and I've had many
Right.
conversations with her. Like, I go say to her, "What's on your mind?" She'll go, "Everything."
Yes.
That's
Well,
it.
we're
How
very
could it be everything?
Yeah, well, and it's really possible, and I'll tell you why, Richard. And this is probably something, I don't know if you took this class in college, but a man and men and women are very different in their brain structure. And what it is there is something called the corpus callosum that divides the right and the left hemisphere. Now, men have thicker corpus callosums and women have thinner ones. And what that means is that women can go from right, left, and we can do it very quickly and very easily. So we multitask. Men are stuck in one side of the brain, which is why you guys are kind of stuck in general sometimes. And it's also a reason why women are, we're not so much about, if there's war or there's peace, women will decide for peace because we know what war comes with, all the bad things. And that's what we can think of and warn everybody about. So it's kind of like the two sexes together, we kind of complete each other. I just wish you dudes would let us be in charge a little bit more, because I think that would solve a lot of the world's problems and balancing these things out. But hey.
It's funny. Well,
too.
I just remember like having conversations. I'm not trying to take this off topic, but I remember I told her one time. I said, when I say the sky is blue, you know what I'm really thinking? She goes, what? I said, the sky is blue. So I just think that I guess it makes a lot of stuff what you're saying, it makes total sense, and I couldn't express it like you do, but I at least can hear that women would identify with you because you're speaking their language. I could just tell from what you're saying is what I'm trying to tell you. Yeah,
your wife would probably love me, and I would probably love her.
Yeah, she's tried a lot to improve stuff over time, and I know it takes a lot of effort. So at least I can have empathy for what you're saying and the journey and everything. I do want to ask you though, what has been? Have you tried to interact with male influencers, or there's just so much to do and so many women that you're just staying in that area of it? And if you have interacted with male influencers, like what's that experience like? How's it different?
Oh, it's kind of funny that you say that, because I'm very much a tomboy. And growing up, I was always around boys. I have a brother. I had 50,000 cousins, and there were no girls in my neighborhood. So I can hang out with the guys and literally become like a guy. So I can sit there and just shoot the what with you all day long, and it's fine. And, being with a lot of women is actually not as second nature to me as hanging out with men are, because that's just the way I grew up. And so it's a different type of challenge. You would think that I probably spent my whole life around women, but that's actually not true. So I have to, when I am helping women, a lot of times what I have to tell myself is to turn off a lot of the male stuff inside me. I'm a little aggressive, and sometimes I can say something without, warning people about it or something. I'm a little abrupt at times. And so I just have to remind myself to be a little softer and think a little bit more. And so I think what the differences is with the way the men communicate and the women communicate. This is a perfect example. If a man wants something from you, he'll walk up to you and tell you exactly what he wants. That'll just be it. He'll just tell you. And then you'll say yes or no, right? If a woman wants something from you, there's a little dance beforehand. And so what she wants to do is she's going to size you up a little bit. So she's going to have a little bit of a conversation, and it's going to be small talk, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be that. And about 10 minutes later, she's going to ask you. Now, that's the difference between a man and a woman and how they talk. So I tend to walk up people and be very direct. And so I get in trouble a lot for doing that. But living in the online world is perfect for me, Richard, because nobody can tell how male-ish I am when I'm writing. You know what I'm saying? So it works in my favor that I can hide the parts about me that are kind of offensive to other women. So that's one of the reasons why I do so well online, is because I'm a little bit more of an aggressive female, but it's not as jolting to them in an online forum. But in person, it might be a little bit more jolting to them. But by the time they know me online, when they see me and I'm jolting in person, they already love me, or they already like me. So they're expecting it. They accept it. That's just Leah. She's a ball buster, a go-getter. but it wouldn't work as well in person. And so I'm just leveling with you and telling you, those are one of my struggles. So that makes social media perfect for me. It's perfect for me because it controls, and I can control those parts about my personality that aren't always fun.
I got a question. And the products and the things you see, like, I've heard, I don't know if it's relevant at all, but I've heard, women say, oh, a man must have designed this, or vice versa,
Yeah.
Do you see that in any of the products you review? Like, can you tell?
Oh,
or
God,
does it even matter?
all the time. All the time. Yeah. And, they're not, it's kind of like you can tell the little things, So it's like, I think more so in today's world, there's more things that are designed by women for women. But 10 years ago, it was really bad. What you're seeing is if you see, new startups with women CEOs or something like that, they're likely tested by women. And then, you probably are not going to have that issue. But I have seen that in a lot of other products where men are the CEOs, men are the marketers, men are designing it. And then they throw it at us as an afterthought. And then they're like, well, do you like it? And then if you say no, then they're like, well, what the heck, And they have to spend a lot of money to figure out the way women think. Now, here's a good example. I do a lot of consulting for brands, and they were one of these clients that I had. They were going to put out this commercial that basically said, oh, we made this change, so we're the best thing ever. And that's why we're so cool. And that was basically the message of the commercial. And I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You should not do that. and they look at me like, what? And, I said it a little nicer than that, but, they asked me why. And I said, because if you think telling a woman that you're awesome and that's why you should buy my product is what she wants to hear, you're fooling yourself. What you want to tell her instead is, I listened to you and I heard what you wanted, and that's why I made this change. And they completely changed their entire commercial based on what I said, and they did a great job. They tested my theory, and I was dead on the money. And that's exactly what women want to hear. If you're going to market to us, listen to us, and then tell us you listened to us, and that's the reason why you did it. That's what women want to hear. Women want to be heard. We want to be respected. We want to be valued. And if we're in that world, if a product respects us, if it values us, and it's useful for us, then we're excited. And especially if the company listened to us. Oh my gosh, that's like, that's the bee's knees right there. But most of the time, brands don't do that. They don't do that. So they don't get people singing for them, but the brands that do and get that, they get a lot of very loyal women, because women, once they're respected and once they feel respected, they will come back for that feeling again and again and again.
Okay, interesting. Huh. Well, I know we've taken this into the psychological realm, so I guess we'll get back to the food and the health realm. When you're able to, okay, so why do you think there are a lot more organic brands, for instance, on the shelves? And, what is driving companies either paying attention or not paying attention to what people want? I know it's a huge question, but what do you think are the real things that will get change done, reduce the amount of harmful, packaging elements and harmful things that are in food, for instance?
I obviously, this is a question about money. And this is honestly what it's about. What do I do for a living? I convince people that more expensive products with less hormone disruption are better for them, and they should put their money in that product as opposed to whatever they're buying. All I'm doing is redirecting resources. That is essentially all I do. So if you buy from somebody else other than the person that you're buying, you're giving that other company resources, right? And for a very specific reason, you're giving them resources. If enough people do that, the big companies start to lose their market share. And then they start freaking out because their market share has gone somewhere else and they want that money back. So what are they going to do? They're going to do exactly what they need to do to get it back, which is why you're seeing a lot of the big General Mills of the world and the Danones of the world and the PepsiCos of the world acquiring all of these smaller companies and acquiring them and purchasing them. They're doing that because they would start up a baby company if they could, but they can't do that and get the amount of respect and admiration from consumers that they want. They're never going to be able to do that because they're big companies. So they're acquiring the small guys, and so they're kind of they're purchasing love, in a sense. But there's nothing wrong with that because that's exactly what we want to have happen. We want these guys to change based on what they're losing. because what they're losing and is something that nobody needs in the first place and the consumers have gone past. So that's a great thing. So the world revolves around money. For most of these companies, it's about money. And, that to me is predictable. And if it's predictable, it's workable. So if we know that they're all about money, all we got to do is keep educating consumers about what is happening, and they're going to keep buying better and better and better things. So what we also have to make sure that we do is we keep the organic brands and the brands that are walking into the natural world, we keep them honest. Because we have to remind ourselves that, once money changes hands, then, different things happen. And so even if it's an organic brand, even if it's a natural brand, we still have to watch them a little bit just to make sure they stay honest, because as they're growing, we want them to keep growing as an organic brand, or growing as a better brand, or growing as a natural brand. So, that's what I see in the future, more of that happening. But of course, it's going to be things like indirect additives are coming because we're pushing them hard, bisphenols, phthalates, perfluorinated chemicals, all that stuff. That is coming. So you'll start to see that more and more in the next 2-3 years, because whatever I do, it's like 3 years behind. So you'll start to see
a little inkling of that I've seen is, this food was produced in a facility that, has nuts in it or something.
Right.
But that's really that's one of the few inklings I've seen of anyone talking about the packaging.
Yeah. So, that is on packaging. And ironically, I have a son that has a nut allergy. So I see that all the time and notice it all the time. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But it's, here's the thing that's the most awesome about humans. They're malleable. We change. We never stay the same. Even though we look the same, we walk around the same, and we kind of act the same, from thousands of years ago to now, we can still be what's all the time. But we change, and we're always progressing forward most of the time. And so when it comes to food, people think that they know a lot now. They're going to learn more, and they're going to learn more, and they're going to learn more. And the more they learn, the better they do. And if they don't do better, it's just because they're overwhelmed. And so when all those other companies start improving, then those people that are overwhelmed, that can't make those decisions, are going to be better off anyways. So, the way the world is going right now, I actually have a lot of hope. I'm one of those people where everything is half full for me. And, that's why I can work in Toxins and be a pretty happy person, because I know that things are getting better. They can only get better from here. And I'm seeing them get better. And I'm seeing a lot more people become aware of the topics that 5 years ago were just frustrating for me because nobody knew about them, so things are getting better, and they're going to continue to getting better. And education is the key. We got to keep social media. We have to keep it open and free. We absolutely have to do that, to be able to, get information about health and wellness to the masses, and to be able to, pressure companies to do the right things. We need to have open and free media. So that's, people believe in health and wellness, then, having an open and free media is also going to be really important, because that's not possible if we have big media companies controlling everything that's happening.
When you mentioned, some of the small brands that people love are being bought up by the larger brands. So two things. Have you seen as a brand grows, no matter how organic and nice and et cetera it is, does it mutate into something bad, or do they still preserve their origins? And what happens when a large company buys a smaller brand, that one that was like, let's say, organic and et cetera? Do they change the brand, or do they leave it alone?
That's a good question. And the answer is it could be either. So there's a lot of companies. So back in the day, if you remember that brand Kashi, right? There is a terminology in the natural industry that says you don't want to get Kashi'd. And what that means is Kellogg's acquired Kashi and then basically threw away all their suppliers and used their own. And it basically became Kellogg's. It said Kashi on it, but it was basically Kellogg's. Well, the consumers saw that and they hated it and they stopped buying Kashi. And that became a warning to all the big companies to not be overbearing on the brands that you acquire. So what I've been seeing and what's been happening lately, and this is like within the last 3 years, a lot of these companies will get acquired by big companies like General Mills and Danone's and et cetera, et cetera. And the big parent company will kind of just stand there and be like, okay, now go do your thing. what the big company will do is give them larger distribution, which means you'll see this company in Target now. You'll see it in CVS. You'll see it in, Walgreens, and you'll see it everywhere, which I think is amazing. Now, the best thing about an organic product is an organic product has to have an organic certification. And no matter what they do, they can't not put organic ingredients in their product or they lose their certification. So when it comes to an organic brand, you're protected from that idea. So a lot of people, when they get upset about big brands acquiring a little brand, you don't really so much have to worry about the ingredients as you have to worry about other things that are happening. Like maybe they'll come out with something that's not organic, right? And put it next to an organic thing and you're thinking it's organic and it's not. Something like that would happen, or they just become a big monster, right? And they lose that feel that they had when they were smaller. Those kind of things happen. However, I have seen something in the supplement industry. I've seen a brand get acquired by a large company. And that brand they didn't have everything in their bottle that they said they had in. So this is the opposite thing happening. So this is when getting acquired by a large company was in their best interest, because what happened for the consumers is those supplements got cleaner. They actually got cleaner because the lawyers come in and they're like, we got to vet everything because now you're part of this big, huge corporation. And now we've got a big target on our back. So if you sue us, they're suing the parent company. They're not really suing the baby company. Right. So then all of a sudden, the lawyers come in. And then, the Q&A people, the quality assurance people come in and vet it to the degree that it would not have ever been able to be vetted as a small company. So, I don't mind so much when the supplement companies get acquired as when I think the supplement companies getting acquired, I actually like that a lot more because those types of things happen. And in the supplement industry, that's like the Wild West right there. There's so many people that are out of FDA compliance. It's not even funny. So, it could go either way. And so I don't want to go down on, acquisitions because I think acquisitions, are cool, but what I don't want is for 5 food companies to own all of the organic brands. I do not want that to happen at all.
Right.
And if you're the kind of person who loves organic and loves people that don't sell, buy Nature's Path. Nature's Path has had like umpteen offers and they are never selling. So if you want that kind of brand, go get their cereal because those guys are awesome. So what I was saying is if you really like organic brands that don't sell and are never going to sell to a big company, go buy Nature's Path because that's one of those companies that has had umpteen offers and they're not selling. They're staying the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it just seems so difficult to really navigate what to do. Have you seen on the other side of the coin, have you seen that for most people, if they make a few adjustments, they can really experience a lot of improvement? Or, are there cases of people that really have to just go whole hog and make tons of changes in order to improve their health?
Yeah, I've seen people make small changes and seeing impacts on their inflammation and all kinds of stuff. Absolutely. One of the things that I think people probably don't think about as much is, if you don't even want to start in food because food's overwhelming, right? I have some friends that started with their air quality and that was just life-changing for them. And they picked up they picked up an IntelliPure, which is one of the air purifiers that we like. And they started dusting their house once a week to get rid of all the dust. And what you don't know about the dust is when you have dust in your house, fire retardants and phthalates are inside that dust because you have fire retardants from your television and your carpet, and they're attracted to the dust. So if you get rid of the dust in your home, you're literally getting rid of the fire retardants. And she just went hardcore with the air. And there was something going on with her air in her home. She changed her cleaning products, the whole 9. And she saw dramatic results in her energy. She felt a lot better. It was an inflammation thing for her. And she really felt a lot better after that. It took about a couple of weeks too for her to feel it, but it was absolutely life-changing for her. And that was her air quality. And so, most people don't know when you breathe in, you breathe out, if you're not allowing your house to kind of breathe on its own, like if you're not opening up the doors and the windows and letting things kind of move around and let the air move around, you're stuck with all of the contaminants that are inside your home. So just open up the window, get an air purifier, do those kind of things. Those are little kind of differences that you can make that are not as emotionally heavy as the food, because I think food is very emotionally heavy because we all use food for something. We either eat it or enjoying it. Heck, I love chocolate ice cream with like nuts on it. If I'm having a bad day, that's like my thing that I want, so we all use food. So food isn't always the best place for you to start because sometimes you're really not emotionally there. You can't do it. So the things that you can do, or you can start with your indoor air quality, or you can change around your personal care products, and use less things that have, hormone disrupting chemicals in it. You can, another thing you do is you can change out your cookware, those types of, that's a simple thing. That's pretty expensive, but that's a simple thing that you can do. That's not going to disrupt your life, so different things like, food packaging, like do you use those Tupperware? Do you use plastic Tupperware, or do you have those little glass containers? Those kind of things are little simple things that you can do that are emotionally light that I think can get you, that actually make a big dent in the amount of toxic chemicals that are in your life. And so don't worry about those kind of things. And if anybody has questions about where to start, where to do, if you guys check out my book, you just have to Google Green Enough. Google Green Enough, it'll pop right up. And that book will help you with everything from the food in your cabinet to the personal care products, your air products, to everything. And it'll help you do it slowly.
What you could do is you could have another version of that book for men and call it Man Enough.
Men are really tough. I got to tell you a story. So I was working in labeling in California. So labeling GMOs in California, in about 2014, I organized all the influencers across the United States and Canada. There's about 650 of us, and organized everybody to talk about labeling nationwide, even though the proposition was happening in California. Now, I worked in politics in the past. I used to work for the California State Assembly, and that's kind of like how I cut my teeth right after college. So I moved into social media. So that was my past. And it's kind of funny. This is where my past and my present kind of came together. So that's why I decided to work on that campaign in California. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. But one of the things that we found out, which is relevant to the men versus women, was they analyzed the audience, and they wanted to ask a question was, what do I have to say to get a man to vote yes for this? Which is really funny because for women, it was really easy. Women, it was like, just talk about the potential health impacts, talk about, just all of those things that we don't know. Women are like, yep, let's label it, safety. That was what women need to hear, was a safety message. For men, it was not that at all. Safety, tell them it's going to, whatever. They're like, yeah, whatever. Okay, I'll die when I get cancer and I'm old. I don't care. And that's kind of like how the men were. But the interesting thing was, if you talk about taking away a guy's rights, that's when they start to get a little upset. So rephrasing it in that idea of, well, did you know that food is labeled in Russia, in Saudi Arabia, in all these other places that are not democratic, and you don't have that right, but they do? What do you think of that? And the dudes are all like, yeah, label that. You know what I mean? So it was really interesting during the campaign to see how men reacted to messages versus women. And I knew this from my, I studied this in college. I knew this like the back of my hand, but seeing it happen in a campaign was really, really interesting. And so I understand what makes men tick, but I don't want to do that to men. I got one husband. You guys are enough. That's one. And I've had my fill. So every other woman here, she's going to have to deal with her own man, is what I'm saying.
Well, that's a good segue. So how does your husband react to you cleaning up the house and cleaning up the food and the environment and everything? And what have you heard anecdotally from other women? Like, how does the rest of the family, the husband and everything, react when they, get the bug to improve everyone, improve the food and all that stuff?
So my husband came across in it's taken my husband 14 years to get here. You know what I'm saying? So I love it when people ask me about my husband because they're like, realistic expectations. What's your husband like? And I'm all like, oh yeah, it took him forever to get here. Forever. And, what I tried to do is I don't want to emasculate my husband ever, ever, ever. That's like my rule number one. And that's just what I try not to do. So I try not to ever make it be like, you have to do this or you need to do this, or, you know what I'm saying? I make it where his while. And the way I do that, I mean, I could tell you that there's going to be some women listening and some men listening, but you know, if I wanted my husband to do something that he really didn't want to do, and I wanted to make it in his best interest to do that, how do you think I get him to do something that he might not want to do? You guys are really simple when it comes down to it, right? You only want two things, okay? One of those things is food. The other one is not food.
There's actually, my wife accused me of this too, and I told her there's actually four things. There's food, there is sex, there's encouragement, and then there's companionship. So there really are four, in my opinion, of the pyramid of male health.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, you know, if you have a difficult husband, and all husbands are people, you have a difficult person, right? They could be husbands or wives or whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. But you have to remember that they're their own autonomous person and they did not sign up for this. You signed them up. So as soon as you understand that part of it, you sign them up. Then you have to remember this has to be in their best interest. So it's kind of like a carrot and a stick kind of thing. And that's why I say slow and steady is the best way to go, because I can emasculate a man by changing everything in his life, but I'm not emasculating him if I'm just changing one or two things and getting his permission. Do you get what I'm saying? One he's on board with, and he's just kind of saying, okay, honey, whatever you want, it's not that big of a deal anyways. And little things over years of time turn into big things. Or you can completely just say, this is how it's going to be. And that's a fight that you're not going to win because you're in a relationship, right? You got to remember that this guy is his, you know, the way he feels about things are important. So you have to work with that. And that's why slow and steady is best. That's also why, you know, little changes work best. That's also why, you know, if you want to do changes like, you know, cookware, guys don't care about cookware except for the price. You know what I'm saying? Guys are not going to really care about the things that you're doing if it doesn't change his food or change the way it looks or whatever. Those things are going to bother him as long as it doesn't cost too much money. So, you know, work with what you have. And that's why, again, I go back to saying again and again and again, it's not about my opinion. It's about the entire community, because of those 6,000 women that we have, you know, in that little Facebook group, and that's how many we have. Everybody has a similar story to one other person, right? There's not going to be a single person in there that doesn't have a husband that's kind of similar to hers. So when people start telling stories, there's always one person that can help, one or two people. And that's where the support is really the success part, where you got to have you got to feel supported by all these women, because we're all telling the same stories and we're all complaining and laughing about our husband. And then you feel lighter and you have more hope afterwards, because you really need to have support to feel hope. And that's what we really have, along with all the scientific information.
Excellent. Okay. Well, this was great. So again, remember, like you said, a lot of people listening are coming from a place of overwhelm. So what's the path? What's the best path for them to get started and go from there? What do you recommend?
I would actually recommend the first thing you do to not do overwhelm is to do something like focus on cookware. So, you know, we at momovation.com, we've got a great post about safe cookware. If you go to momovation.com and just search safer cookware, you'll find 2 investigations that are all about cookware. That's an easy place to start. Another easy place to start is your packaging, what you're putting your food in, you know, those types of plastic things. Another easy place to start is purchasing kitchen appliances, or purchasing, like, you know, spoons and spoons and stuff that you're stirring the food with, not made of plastic, you know, those types of things. Right. Those types of places are places you can start that are not emotionally heavy, that will get no kickback or no pushback from your family. They may not even notice, you know. But when, for instance, if you just take that, if you go to your kitchen and you look and see your spatula, do you have a black plastic spatula? Go in your kitchen, you know, after this podcast, go look. If you have a black spatula, you have to know something really serious about black plastics. Last year, the study came out where they analyzed the contents of black plastics. And what they found was black plastics are coming from your electronics. So when you have a VCR and you throw it away, all of those fire retardants and phthalates and all those crazy things were in and around that plastic. Well, they recycled that plastic and then they made it into a spatula. And now you're cooking with it and warming it up and you're using it to fry your eggs with. That's not the best spatula for you. Go throw that spatula away. Get something that's either stainless steel or, you know, bamboo or something like that. Those are the kind of changes that I would highly suggest that you make in a home that are really low impact emotionally, that can make a huge difference in the toxicity of what you're serving your family.
Okay, that's a great start. And resources, so is the best place to start is at Mamavation, like the blog, or where should people start?
Yeah, so if you go to mamavation.com and you go to the Start Here menu, it'll send you to a page that has literally every single investigation that we've done, all of our tips and tricks on how to start. And then if you join the Facebook group, you can go through the Facebook University. So if you go to the Mamavation Facebook group, in the back end of the Facebook group, we have a university where it can take you through your entire house step by step by step. So we really encourage you to join the community and to just, get started. We'd love to have you.
That's great. Well, Leah, thank you so much. It's been a cool call, and I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Richard. Hope you have a great week. So happy to be here.
You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.